Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news, and what a day in Budapest. Latifi topping a session for the first time in his Formula 1 career, Hamilton topping a session for the first time this season, and George Russell putting that Mercedes on pole. The first time this year a non-Ferrari or Red Bull has been on pole position. What does this mean for the championship fight, and how exactly were Mercedes able to extract this pace for the rest of the weekend potentially as well? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Not a great weekend so far for Sebastian Vettel. Crashed out in FP3, finds himself needing to repair the car last minute, ends up out of Q1 as well. So not a great weekend when he announced his retirement. Just to mention this as well from Charles Leclerc, as we looked last night, the fact that Verstappen is also taking his fourth gearbox probably means penalties for Verstappen are to come later on this year. But Charles Leclerc also on his fourth gearbox as well, so no real advantage to Ferrari on that front. But certainly in terms of the grid lineup for tomorrow, massive advantage to Ferrari over Red Bull in terms of potential points they could accrue this weekend. With Mercedes seemingly back in the fight in Quali Pace and maybe race pace as well, we shall see. That does open up the championship very much indeed for hopefully a three-way fight, at least for race victories as this season progresses. This is a remarkable shot, at least screenshot right here, with Nicholas Latifi topping free practice 3. An incredibly wet session, of course. A lot of drivers very much struggling, as were Mercedes for the vast majority of the session, as in fairness was Sergio Perez, although didn't get that much running. Latifi comes out at the end on the Inters and just bangs it into P1 with the Williams, 6/10 faster than Charles Leclerc. And Charles Leclerc was talking to his engineer being like, how far am I off P1? Because I think he thought he put together a rather good lap. And he was like, yeah, you're 6/10 off Latifi on the same tyre. And Charles was like, what's going on here, lads? Can you explain that to me? But yeah, Latifi P1, Leclerc P2, Albon P3 at the end of this session. Latifi's honestly been a solid driver in the wet, I think. We saw it in Silverstone, but we don't often get to see it. But unfortunately, the rain stopped and it dried up massively for qualifying. We didn't quite get to see the same Latifi in qualifying, but still, the fact that he topped the session was still remarkable and pretty awesome to see, to be honest. And he was banging in purple sectors left, right, and centre. And in fairness, he probably could have made it into Q2 as well, but he messed up the very last corner of the lap. He put in a purple first sector, green middle sector, messed up the final corner. Probably would have had Q2, not to be though. But Gasly and Tsunoda both out in Q1 of qualifying. Gasly, I think, would have made it, but had a track limits violation. So another disaster class for Alpha Tauri. Both Williams out and Vettel out as well in P18. Now, Q2 was also really interesting because Perez had a lap time deleted initially for this incident where the stewards thought he was out. I think maybe they were looking back to Austria when he was out and they didn't kind of disqualify the lap or delete the lap until after qualifying had concluded. And then here they were maybe went a bit overboard, deleted this lap, realized, okay, it's actually still in, and then they had to reinstate the lap. But that lap wasn't actually good enough, right? He needed to improve further, and he couldn't, partly because he seemed to get held up by Kevin Magnussen into turn 2, lost a few tenths there, but couldn't recover the rest of the lap, and Perez was out in Q2 in P11, which is a massive surprise, really, and not a good day at all for the Red Bulls. Perez P11, Zhou, Magnussen, Stroll, Schumacher, the other drivers to go out, so the Haas, and the kind of upgrades that Magnussen had didn't really seem to deliver that much performance this weekend. And then Max Verstappen, the other Red Bull, also running into issues. He had, I think it was earlier this season, I forget what race it was, whether it was Baku or something, where I think Perez had some sort of power unit issue where he lost power for a bit, or it wasn't great, and then they had to deactivate a sensor, and then his car had most of the power but not all the power. There was some sort of power unit issue that Perez had earlier this year, and in fairness, of course, we've also seen that with Max earlier on this season. Probably Ferrari are thinking it's about time that Verstappen and the Red Bull guys have some other reliability type issue. But that's exactly what happens here for Verstappen. He does one lap, locks up into turn 2. That's only good enough for P10, and then he loses power, can't put together a good lap on the second time around, ends up P10. So it's P10, P11 for Red Bull. They're they're next to each other as they might have hoped to be, but not in the grid positions that they would have wanted. Good news, of course, for Ferrari, seeing that Perez being out in Q2. Good for the constructors. That leaves Ferrari in a rather promising position, especially because it's difficult to overtake around Hungary, and definitely the grid tomorrow is very spicy for an exciting race indeed. So advantage Ferrari, but as I say, with Mercedes potentially back to a certain degree, we'll see how things go tomorrow. It does really spice up the championship fight because Ferrari have been saying for quite some time, if they want to really get back in the constructors, they need Mercedes there to take points off the Red Bulls, which might be what happens tomorrow. Now, I was watching this qualifying session, and first of all, it was Hamilton and Russell that went P1, P2 in Q1. For some reason, after a tragic Friday for Mercedes in a difficult FP3, they seemed to just figure out what to do with their car, put it in the right window, knew what to do in terms of the tyre warm-up. They were getting the softs fired up quite nicely, getting a lot of grip. The car honestly looked like it was kind of on rails through Sector 2 at times, impressively, because they were losing so much time there on Friday practice. I did still think, though, the Ferrari is the better car around here. It should be on pole. Carlos, I think, made a slight mistake, Sainz, and I was watching Sainz versus Leclerc this weekend and thinking, honestly, Sainz has been driving better recently, to be perfectly honest. Like, he's been on fire, and again this weekend, I felt like Sainz was going to be the guy to put it on pole for his second pole position of his career. Looked exactly like that was going to happen. Leclerc wasn't, it was a couple of tenths off the pace, to be honest, but Sainz did make a mistake in Sector 2, wrestling with the car a little bit more, and it was George Russell in the Mercedes that put together an absolutely stellar lap, one of the best we've seen so far this year, no question. Just beautiful to watch. If you guys haven't seen the onboard yet, I'm sure you guys can find it. It'll be on Reddit and stuff like that as well, or probably on the Sky Sports Twitter or something, but he didn't go purple in any sector. It was green, green, green. It just put in a very an excellent, consistent lap, like I was hitting the corners perfectly, not taking too much risk, but throwing it into the corners with full confidence. The car would comply and the tyres were warm enough to get the grip he needed and sent it into Q1. So yes, the Ferraris made a couple of mistakes, but great lap from George Russell, the first pole position of his career, and it creates an incredibly spicy dynamic for the rest of the weekend and also for the rest of the season. The fact that this is the first time a non-Ferrari or Red Bull has been on pole position, and it's George Russell to do it. Maybe Hamilton could have also been in the top 3 here without the issue that he ran into. We'll see in a second, but great to see for George Russell. This honestly could be like, look, this season's been great for Russell. He's been performing incredibly well, but this might be an even further turning point, right? We saw what happened to Mick Schumacher when he got his first points, like one taste of that, and all of a sudden he seemed like a different driver. Who knows if the same could happen to Russell here? Like, okay, he's got his first pole position now, he can push on, knows he's the man, and who knows what he can deliver tomorrow, right? Because remember earlier this season in Spain when he was defending pretty heroically against Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez as well, and then tomorrow should theoretically be easier to defend, but the Ferraris are probably going to be quick in the race pace. But look, if the Mercedes is quick in qualifying, who says they can't be even quicker in race pace as they have been so far this season? Hamilton was right there with Russell, if anything had a slight edge on Russell for the majority of the weekends, as you might expect for the 8-time pole sitter, an 8-time Hungarian Grand Prix victory at this particular track. But he ran into a DRS issue on the final lap of, well, he was trying to do a run, tried to open the DRS, didn't work for, of course, the first straight and the second straight as well. That would have cost him loads of time on those straights, so he had to basically just abort the lap and take what ended up being P7, which could have been worse in fairness, but it's still not good at all around a circuit like this. But I think Mercedes on the whole will take this, right? If Mercedes came into the weekend and they were asked the question, would you prefer P4, P5, or let's say P3, P4, but be 5, 6, 7 tenths off the pace, or would you prefer to have one driver on pole and one in 7th, they would take the latter, right? Because it shows they've got the pace there. They've found the ability to extract this pace in qualifying that Russell and probably Hamilton would also have delivered a similar lap time. It's doubtful whether Hamilton would quite have been able to put together such a complete lap as Russell did, because those laps don't come along very often. But still Hamilton might have done a P3, could have even been a front row lockout, right? You can't rule it out, which I'm sure will be incredibly encouraging for Mercedes going into the summer break. But of course they've got to convert that into a good result tomorrow as well. Toto Wolff happy for the first time it seems in quite some time. So yes, definitely it seemed like Mercedes extracted an awful lot today. No points for Saturday, says George Russell. Let's go tomorrow. But they do find themselves in a nice spot to potentially hold the Ferraris back. And this is what Toto Wolff has to say about what happened here, what they're going to plan to do going forwards, and why exactly they were able to extract this performance. Just managed to find the setup. George Russell says they were working till like 11 p.m. last night to try and find the direction they wanted to go. They figured it out for Saturday, and if they write everything down that they did here and manage to replicate this for the future, they could be a threat not just on Sunday, but on Saturday as well.
Yeah, we just said we just need to write down everything we did this morning, including the food and the drinks we drank, in order to be able to replicate. So, yeah, we take it.
Honestly?
We knew it because we wanted to play it easy until the summer break and then interfere again. No, the truth is we saw it from qualifying, from the beginning of qualifying, that our tires were in the right window, and the car was balanced, and everything kind of came together, and then the crew drove it really well, gained confidence from run to run that the grip was actually there, and this is the result.
Back Lewis, give a little bit of info on Lewis. What happened with him?
Yeah, it's in these moments you wanna cry of joy for the pole position. Equally, the car was good for him to be there as well, and so very, very bittersweet.
What does this mean for Mercedes' season, Toto?
I don't know how you say in English, one bird doesn't make a summer.
Swallow, yep.
Yeah, so that's a solid result. We were always off the pace on a single lap. Now we're on pole. So let's see what we can do with that tomorrow in the race. And if we're able to have the pace there, I believe that we are part of the funny games in the front again.
So Toto Wolff saying they should write everything down, including what they had for breakfast. But yeah, seemingly they just worked very hard overnight, came into today, figured out where they wanted to take the car. And I think it's really the tyre warm-up issue and actually getting the tyres to work properly that's been a key issue for the W13. And today they seem to figure it out right. The drivers had confidence. Hamilton said he was actually pretty confident in the car, was having a good time in it until the DRS issue kind of messed up his Q3. But until then, like, both drivers were very confident in the Mercedes, probably for the first time this season in a qualifying session, at least since, I guess, Austria, where they were looking good, and then, of course, both crashed out of the session. Now, Leclerc, of course, and the Ferraris are still confident that they can deliver a 1-2 in the race tomorrow. They're confident in their race pace, like, they need to figure out what happened with the tyres. It definitely seemed like today was nowhere near as strong for the Ferrari as Friday was, but yeah, I think they're pretty confident they've still got some race pace here in this car. But look, it's Hungary, it's not easy to overtake, and if George Russell gets away first, then who knows what's going to happen there, right? Especially because Sainz reckons there's some sort of issue with the Ferrari car, which makes their starts worse than they could be. I think it was even said recently that maybe it was Bottas or Magnussen was getting a new clutch in their Ferrari-powered car because there was some sort of gearbox thing in the Ferrari gearbox which is not allowing them to start quite as effectively as they might have done. So maybe that's another reason why maybe it's turn one tomorrow. Russell goes in first. If he's leading after the first lap, then who knows what could potentially happen in the race. But yes, here we go to close out the video. This is the grid for tomorrow. We'll start from 10th. We've got Sergio Perez and Verstappen 11th and 10th. They're not going to have an easy time working their way up through the fields. Neither will Lewis Hamilton starting from 7th because in front of him, he's got Fernando Alonso and Ocon. I mean, Alonso, old rival. It's never easy to get past Alonso, as he found out very much indeed last season around this same track when Alonso was defending against Hamilton to try and protect Ocon. Same story this time around. Ocon wants to be in front. Good quality from him. He's never an easy driver to get past. Hamilton had a few clashes with him even so far this season. Norris, fantastic quality from Norris and really weekend in general, putting it P4. So Hamilton is going to have a far from easy time making progress through the field tomorrow. Who knows how long George Russell can hold on because we still expect the Ferrari to be fastest. But look, if the Mercedes is even a couple of tenths off and George Russell just overcame that gap with a great lap himself, then maybe it's another couple of tenths faster in the race, then who knows what's going to happen tomorrow in terms of who actually has the fastest car around here. It does seem to kind of come alive, the Mercedes, on higher fuel sometimes. And then, of course, Verstappen also going to try and make his way through the field and is going to run into similar traffic to what Hamilton will, you would imagine. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.